I'll be talking about the need to embrace cultural heritage in modern marketing. Again, based on what we've observed, my experience, and I hope we can trigger a conversation beyond just this session in terms of what we do and how we do what we do. I'll just dive into it because it's sorry, it's not moving. Oh, cool, love it. Okay, so a little caveat. Um, it's going to be about Africa to a large degree. A few examples from outside of Africa, but I think we should focus on Africa. Nigeria also, to be specific in some instances. And it's been inspired by no other person, no other legend than the one they call Abamieda, Fela Ramson Kuti, or Fela Nikolakbo Kuti, as he called himself much later in life. He had this song that he called Africa Center of the World, and actually it's the center of the world. And you're going to get some points about where Africa is headed as far as the world is concerned, and the essence of culture as far as we are also concerned as a country, as a continent rather. In Africa, our superheroes are different. I'm sure you're used to these Marvel, superheroes and stuff. Our superheroes are people who rose to be heroes starting from humans. But we still have things that we use to test heroic, quality. These are the Sharo festival people, the Fulani people actually. And the Sharo festival, if you know about it, is a test of endurance, of valor. Young men hoping to pick wives, subjected to some kind of caning. And if you don't really show any kind of fear, you are qualified to get yourself a bride. I don't know how many of you qualify to get a bride in today's world if you have to endure that. The same thing about the Suri people of Ethiopia. This is a coming of age ceremony with the caning thing. So they also cane themselves, also test for endurance and all of that. This thing seems to be a bit common in different parts of Africa. The Maasai, we all know about the Maasai of Kenya. And all these cultures, what they have in common is they are pastoral, in nature. The Maasai and their cow, I mean, they are inseparable. So this is a Maasai. In other parts of the world, if you saw a man like this, you would think he just murdered somebody, but this is actually, the blood from the cow, from the cattle that he's drinking. It's part of what gives them vigor, according to their own. So culture is, it's peculiar. It's also subjective. What is culture to me might not necessarily be, culture to the other person, but it is not my job to judge your culture. So don't you judge my culture as well. There's a famous quote from Peter Drucker, the father of modern management. He was quoted to have said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Now, his intention was more of corporate culture, but we can also relate with this as regards where we are with culture in this context. This is what he says: a culture normally thwarts any attempt to create or enforce a strategy that is incompatible with that culture. But let us move into the space of marketing communications. So while he's talking about corporate culture, it's a very powerful saying, and it still works within our context as regards how culture is a way of life when it comes to marketing. And we've seen this, we've seen brands thrive on this. So in our business, in communication business, when you use the relevant cultural cues and themes for campaigns, be it in Africa, in India, in Brazil, or wherever you may be, using these things have become the norm, for brands who can make it, who want to make a difference. And when you use it properly, the benefits are immeasurable, as you will see with one or two things I'm going to be sharing down the line. Culture itself is nothing but a combination of beliefs, behaviors, objects, and other characteristics common to the members of a particular group or society. Like I said, it is peculiar to a certain, society. There are certain parts of the country where some things are done because it's what they've always done over time, which may look strange to other people, but that is why it is cultural. So culture itself is a combination of all those beliefs and norms and nuances that make you, as a people. So in other words, people define themselves through culture to conform to society's shared values. They can see, he's an Ishakiri man, he's a TV man, he's an Ewe man from Ghana or whatever it is. So this is a way of identity, more than anything else. It's about showing, identify with your group in terms of the values that you share with them, the language you speak, the customs you share, the norms and folklore and rules that you share with them. So what are the drivers of culture? I mean, as enumerated here, a key part of that is language. Even when you are not from a particular culture, the fact that you speak their language creates affinity. They are ready to deal with you because you speak their language. So language is a key component of culture. And of course, there must be a community for there to be a culture. If there's no community, there's no culture, because the community helps to entrench culture and pass it on from one generation to the other. Of course, it belongs to a region. There's food, drink, which will be peculiar to, where, I mean, I always use the example of the Chinese people. Despite the fact that the Western world will do everything to run down communism, but you go to any Western city, there's a Chinese restaurant, and the Western person wants to pride himself or herself as being good at using the chopstick to eat Chinese food. So in a way, that culture still found a way of rearing its head in an enemy, territory, so to say, by virtue of its food. So food is a big part of culture, as well as drink. Of course, there are celebrations. There are things you do, that are part of you. And of course, there will be tradition, which will come from all the things that you do over time. And they become tradition because it's like you've set standards for how you do the things you do. So they become tradition that you observe from one generation to the other. But I must say that culture is not in any way static. Culture is dynamic. So culture keeps evolving with time. So here we are in Africa. It's a vast continent. I've seen some, whether it's true or not, some rendition of the African map saying that, look, it actually can contain, a couple of other countries or continents that we've not been done justice by the way our map is being represented. But that's a different conversation. But it's a very diverse continent. That's the point to make. And the truth of the matter is that two Africans are more genetically different from each other than perhaps a Chinese and a European are from each other. I mean, this is the reality. We're so close, but we have a lot of things that are peculiar to the different localities. So how can then strategy ignore such a place? It is not possible. At the moment, Africa is 1.5 billion people. We will probably compete with China and India. India is about 1.2 or so. China is not even problem enough to 1.5. But this is us as a continent, but those are countries. But even at that, that is a huge demographic, part of the world, to look at, with 54 different countries, 3,000 ethnic groups, and 2,000 languages spoken. Distinct languages. I mean, when you look at these variants of the languages, they go into even thousands, as the case may be. So this is Africa, and I'm showcasing some things that we know. This is from Benin, the Benin bronze head. We also have the Ife bronze head. You have the Nok, terra culture, terra sculpture, and a whole lot of stuff like that. Fabric, that's who we are. We display creativity. Be it the Adire from this part of the world, Akwete from the east, Kente from Ghana, a whole lot of stuff, out of Africa. Of course, music. I mean, you cannot write about African music and not talk about this legend, Fela Anikulapo Kuti, very authentic, who really left a whole lot for us to celebrate, and who has influenced what we call, African music today in a very big way. Of course, those who came after him, today's stars, the Davidos and the rest of them, Burna Boy, and you can see the influence of culture. And again, I would like to speak to that. When I was growing up in my university days, we listened to Western music, especially America, pop from America, R&B, and the rest of them. Nigerian musicians then were always trying to sound like, Western, musicians, and they never really made it big as we have today. things changed when musicians out of Nigeria started looking inward and reflecting their culture. I mean, you look at some of these concerts and you see, non-Nigerians, even white people, singing along with Ashake or Burna Boy, even though they don't speak the language. It is soft power that we're beginning to get as a nation, which is very good for us. This never used to happen. And because they now started taking pride in their culture, singing in Yoruba, Igbo, in Pidgin, in what have you, with no apologies to anybody, that is when you are authentic, and I think it's a very good subject area to look at in terms of looking at the influence of culture. Architecture, Africa is, blessed with all sorts of, architectural masterpieces. This is a Timbuktu Mosque from Mali. Of course, you have the pyramids in Egypt, and you go to Ethiopia, you go to other parts of Africa with lots of things from the past. Movies, Boyega, and of course, I can't remember her name now from a couple of series in the USA. And sorry, I've forgotten his name now. Anyway, so these are Nigerian stars who have excelled in other parts of the world, but these are our children, and they are exports to the world. Now, listen carefully to this clip about, where we are as a continent and where we're headed. And I think it will probably just give you a sense of why we should take it serious, why we should take Africa serious, and why we should take our culture serious as well for the future that is ahead of us. I just played, it's not a very long one, it's a short one.
Yeah, well, I want to come back to one of those little vignettes you present in the book, because it made me have a think about certain things in a different light. But the biggest number you have here is 4 billion, which is projected to be the population of Africa at the end of this century. And that's basically going to be half the planet. Half the planet will be African. And that's a huge change, because if you go back just 100 years, the population of the British Isles and the population of British West Africa were more or less exactly the same. England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales versus what's now Nigeria, the Gambia, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and so forth. People don't quite grasp the difference in scale in what's happened in Africa.
I think there's another way of putting it which might resonate with people, which is if you go back to 1950, there were 2 Europeans for every sub-Saharan African. And by the end of this century, there are going to be 6 or 7 sub-Saharan Africans for every European. And I think that is going to change the world. Now, I can't tell you exactly how it will change it. I always say that demography is one lens on the future, but it's only one lens. But for sure, when there are 6 or 7 times as many Africans as Europeans, versus when going back to 1950, there were twice the number of Europeans to Africans, it will change everything. It's going to change the demography is the sort of fundamental thing. It's going to change economics. It's going to change global strategy, military power. It's going to change culture. It's going to change food. It will be a very different world when the weightings of the 2 continents are so very different.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm going to skip the second video. We've lost some time. It's almost saying the same thing in a way, just that it's focusing on the power of the next generation, Gen Z, more than anything else, but there's no point going into that. So what are the things that we'll need to look at? I mean, there are things that are also evolving and changing about Africa. Patriarchy is one. Africa has always been very traditional, but like I said earlier, culture is not in any way static, it's dynamic. And so these are some of the things that will be tested over time, and certain things will evolve, because back then women, were consigned to living at home, taking care of the family. Back then, people would want to raise a lot of children because they needed the children to farm for them. That is not, an advisable thing to do today, if you don't have the money to take care of the children. But patriarchy is being challenged. And one of the examples I'm going to share with you in terms of also how marketing communications is reacting to this is the commercial from Maggie. Just listen, watch it.
I had invited the boss for lunch. Okay. Then I get called to handle some emergency. Then my plan B, the caterer, gets hopelessly stuck somewhere.
Oh, what?
Then I call hubby, and he says,
What are we going to do?
Relax. We got this.
Now it's up to me and him to save the day. With help from Something Special, the new Niger seasoning from Maggi, specially made from natural stockfish, smoked fish, crayfish, and other ingredients to give your soups and pottages that Nigerian bottom pot taste.
You need to tell me how you got that bottom pot taste.
And then later, she said,
Come see me Monday morning. Let's talk about the new branch we're opening.
just then my family shows up. And just when I thought the drama was over,
This is stuff. Let's go to this.
Delicious bottom pot, yeah.
I mean, before now, it's more of you seeing the man seated waiting for the woman to finish the cooking. But I think Maggie, had some backlash at some point. People picked up on those things. And you can see most of the seasoning cubes today, you see the men being more involved and all of that. The women are not just meant to be in the kitchen. So things are evolving across Africa. You can also see, even from a marketing point of view, the naming of the sub-brand, Bottom Pot Nigeria. And these are things people will shy away from in the past. But now there's need for authenticity. We want to get closer to the consumer. I want to speak their language. So it's quite amazing, what can happen, how culture can, influence the things that we do as professionals. Of course, Africa is also known for its cosmic belief system. These are things that have been challenged today by, the mainstream religions of Islam and Christianity, but it is still a very spiritual, continent, and African beliefs are still very rife in some parts of Africa in particular. But again, it would be good to see how these dynamics work together, even in terms of our approach to religion and African culture. And I think I have one or two things down this presentation that might just speak to one or two of these issues. Of course, there's music and dance. There's a tendency for people to think about culture and look at what we call cultural dance in school in those days. It's not just about exhibitionism of the dance of the past. It's about things evolving, how we evolve. I spoke earlier about Nigerian music, which by virtue of that also has influenced African music and contemporary music. How are we doing? As you can see, even in contemporary music, influences from our folk songs, influences from our shared experiences, phrases from the street. It's quite amazing, how Africa has evolved as regards to music and dance today. Of course, we still have our strong family values, the extended family in particular. We're losing it, I must say. We're getting a bit more westernized, but these things still hold very strong in certain parts of Africa. And I think they should also reflect in what we do as communications people. Aspirations, I mean, Africans are very aspirational people, Nigerians in particular. As you can see in all the things that we've been talking about, in the different spaces of music, filmmaking, comedy, sports, and all of that, football and what have you. Africans aspire a lot and believe we can rule the world. So just to, at a glance, the evolving African culture in terms of what is material and immaterial, as I've just taken us through. And when you use this very well, this could actually help to, to tell better stories in terms of where you situate it, because these are things people can relate with. So let's see how culture can also thwart strategy. A good example is the campaign that was done by Omo in other markets known as Persil. Dirt is good. Of course, this worked in Europe, but it never really worked in Africa, and I'll tell you why.
When you're smiling, and the whole world smiles with you. And when you're laughing, oh, you're laughing. The sun comes shining through. When you're crying, you bring on the rain. Stop your sighing. Won't you be happy again? When you're smiling, keep on smiling. And the world will smile.
So the premise is that, let children play. When they play, they get dirty. Don't focus on the dirt. Focus on the fact that they're having a good time. They're growing. So that, in that sense, is good. on a global scale, on a global level, yes, worked very well in Europe and other parts of the world. But in Nigeria, in Africa, it didn't really work. Parents are not, fans of children getting up and about for the It's like, sit down there, it's a very common thing with most parents around this part of the world. And of course, there's a worry about you just getting yourself unnecessarily dirty and creating work for the poor mom. So that is good, but malaria kills more kids in Africa. So maybe we have other priorities, then of course that is good also, but cholera is still a big problem. How have campaigns been able to leverage these values that we've spoken about? Let's look at what we did with hypo bleach. Because again, part of the thing about culture also is that culture is not static, like we said. And culture sometimes can be challenged. That is our job, really. You can look at it and say, how do you, it's not just about taking from, pop culture or any culture for that matter. It's about also adding to it. How can you challenge certain things, to make a difference? Depending on what drives you as a brand. Of course, it has to be in the character of the brand, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Otherwise, you're forcing on the brand what it does not necessarily believe in. So let's look at the issue of patriarchy and taboos and all of that, and as challenged by hypo in this particular tactical work. It was for Valentine's Day. Let me just play it.
Taboos are a way of life in Nigeria. Taboos surrounding the traditional roles of men in relationships with their partners are even more prevalent. For instance, while it's commonplace for ladies to wash their men's underwear, it is considered abominable for a man to be seen washing his partner's underwear.
No, I can't do that.
Why is that?
It's not normal. The personal taboo. So why should I be carrying watching his wife on this?
Yes.
That is some problem.
That's why Hypo, Nigeria's leading bleach brand and a tireless advocate for questioning stereotypes, decided to make the Valentine's season more intimate by breaking yet another stereotype with the hashtag Pure Love Challenge. 1 week before Valentine's Day, a video showing a young man washing his partner's underwear and then challenging other men to do the same was posted online. The video, which was driven with the hashtag Pure Love Challenge, initially had no connection to the brand, a deliberate attempt to ensure organic growth in conversations. Within 24 hours of the release, the video gained 250,000 views on Instagram, with men all over taking up the challenge and posting videos of their own. Hashtag Pure Love Challenge became the most talked about topic amongst influencers, discussion forums, and across social media. As hashtag Pure Love Challenge reached its climax on the eve of Valentine's Day, the Hypo brand revealed itself as the brain behind the original trending video by releasing the complete version, which showcased hypo bleaching use and other materials to support the campaign. On Facebook, the campaign reached 118,882 people with over 2,000 comments and 48,000 views, all earned organically. More so, conversation grew 41 million impressions on Twitter, making hashtag Pure Love Challenge the #1 trending topic on Valentine's Day in Nigeria, and proving that where pure love exists, taboos don't. Or do they?
Yeah, I mean, you
Taboos.
could make bleach actually, trend more than chocolate on Valentine's. I mean, it's all down to what you do. These were just some stills from that campaign. For 3 Crowns, what we did was create. It started from the thinking that, look, mothers are the pillar, are the base of the family, and we borrowed from culture to support that. If we were to go to, especially in the Southwest, the palaces of the kings, you will find some pillars that are carved, holding the roofs. And this was the inspiration for what you're about to see. And it's about celebrating matriarchy this time around, the role of women, how strong women are across Nigeria. You go to different parts of the country and see hardworking women taking care of their children, going to the farm and doing everything you can imagine. And even in today's world, they are still there. So this was done for 3 Crowns. And you can see the premise is that the woman is the base of the family. So who takes care of the woman? Who does she depend on? Who supports her? That is the brand. 3 Crowns milk that you have at the base. And the mom is carrying everybody, as you can imagine there. So this was what we did, and it was done in 3D. But interestingly, it was so lovely, the client decided to say, you know what? can we have this also carved in reality? And we did. So we went to Benin. We commissioned some artists to come up with the real thing, and we gave them out. The client rather gave them out to people visiting from their headquarters from the Netherlands anytime they came to Nigeria. I think we must have carved close to 300 or 400 of this over time. And I didn't just stop there. It was so good. The client also said, "Can we even have a larger than life, version of this with what's it called, fiber?" And we did it. And we did it right there, installed it in front of their office in Ogba. Yeah, this was done way back then for Indomie, also taken from culture. It's about religion, history, artifacts, and what have you. It's saying that culture is not static in a way, that you can still embrace modernity, even though, yes, we are Nigerians. So this was done back then for Oriental noodles, actually. So this is the Orient meeting Africa. So of course the Ife bronze head, I'm sure we all know about it, with a strand of noodles. The same thing there, just a little hint of that. I spoke earlier about the Sharo fighters from the Fulani people, and this was something we tried using. Again, focusing on dogma for Go TV way back. So yeah, the Sharo, they do this vlogging thing and all of that. For them, it's some kind of entertainment. So what we're pitching here is that, look, for other kinds of entertainment that may not be as excruciating as this, you can go for Go TV. And of course, this is your Shango festival where they have to eat up fire and all sorts of things. I mean, it's entertaining to some, but if you want some milder entertainment that won't demand you to spit out fire, you have to go to Go TV. I mean, the beauty of doing these things, I must say, is that they are refreshing. They speak to who we are. And you feel a sense of identity. It's like you going to a foreign country and somebody speaks your language. I mean, the tendency is that you will stick to that person. We did this for Airtel to communicate their wide 4G network. We couldn't find any other way to do it than to come to fashion with a big agbada 4G there, embroidery, join the network with the widest 4G coverage. So we need to look more inward and reflect ourselves in what we do. We cannot out-west the West. I always say to people, there are lots of things around us that it will only take careful observation for us to be able to. And when you do them well, people will take note and you will be the better for it. So what does this mean for creativity in Africa? When we localize our stories, it's a sure way to compete and get more global relevance. Because even Hollywood rather. Hollywood is looking for fresh stories. And these fresh stories, I believe, will come from Africa. All the stories from African writers series, Pace Setters, and the rest of them. I mean, somebody should be thinking about writing, putting them into screenplays that can add something fresh to the world today. So this is about Africa adding its voice to that big global conversation. And we cannot do it by trying to be like the West. So where the West is so superior in production values, the way we can stand out is in telling authentic African stories. And we have to tap into our culture to make that happen. Now, I'm going to talk about telco, because in this case now, we're talking about somebody actually eating culture, not just for breakfast, but also for lunch and dinner. We all know about the key players in the telco space, MTN, the Airtel, the Glo. It's a very competitive place. I'm sure we know that now, but a lot of things have even changed. If this was prepared way back, I've just updated it. Now, Airtel was the brand that we were, given the opportunity to work on. And what Airtel did differently, because Airtel came to that game with a disadvantage. The other guys had a higher technology. They had 4G network, but Airtel had a 3G network at the time that we engaged with Airtel. So, ordinarily a disadvantage for the brand. But what did Airtel do? I mean, when they spoke to us, what we thought was that the best way to do this was to tell stories first and foremost. In telling stories, we'll break their eyes and we'll have a conversation with people. Because unfortunately, these other guys, when they had the technology, they were focusing more on the technology and less on the people that it is meant for. They were talking about how speedy, how this, how that it was, not what's in it for me. And you should always think about this. For any piece of work, whether it's about culture or not, the consumer is asking himself or herself, what's in it for me? So when they were not answering that question, what's in it for me? And that was the opening that we had. And we said, you know what? Forget about the technology. Let us talk about what's in it for the consumer. And we went into storytelling. And we started out with 2 commercials. One of them we called Lost. I'm sure you've seen it before with Gabriel Folanyo marooned somewhere on an island. And the other one, is we call Alex and Joe, these 2 gentlemen on a bus. Now, I've chosen to play only this one because it was the beginning of storytelling in a different sense. I mean, Gabriel's was very entertaining, no doubt about it. But this opened the way. It showed us that, if you got it right with storytelling, you can connect better with people. So let me just play this commercial. It was not played for a long time, so some of you may not have seen it, some of you may have seen it, but it's one of those things. For me, I love
Mama, I would like to see your face again. Yeah.
This one is my first daughter. This is my second daughter. That's the one after that. That's my granddaughter there. Oh, she's a handful. She is a handful. What's the matter? I have never seen my grandchildren. What's your son's name? John Uka. John Uka. Is that your son? Yes.
Yes. I would like to see your face again. Yeah. Bye. It's not you. I see your face.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
So that was the beginning as regards the Airtel story. And what we decided after that was, look, we'll still focus on this data thing, but find, elements in our culture that can help us achieve resonance with people. So looking at some kind of cultural tensions, especially in relationships. And in doing that, we're able to show, how this brand can play a role, a mediating role, so to say, within these tensions that we've played up. I'm going to just play 1 or 2 of them. And what we did also was to stay consistent with the characters we were using in commercial. So it became some kind of mini soap opera, because people could tell the stories. I mean, it's so amazing that people will walk up to me and say, oh, we think the next story should be so and so. They were so involved because they could see themselves in the story. So this was the one about the in-laws that started after that.
Now, the smartphone network.
So the rivalry was so consuming, so to say, that we're able to drive, a whole lot of, initiatives from the brand using these characters over time. This, I'm sure you remember, was the naming ceremony. So these are aspects of our culture, and we found ways of merging, things. You can see the Igbo, Yoruba, thing coming to play, even in that and in what you're about to see, without necessarily being so much in your face and just exhibiting it for the sake of it. It was organic, if I could say so.
If you don't get money, hide your face. You can call his phone doctor. Ọmọ ìyá teacher. Wọ́n ti gbá penalty lọ throwing.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Okay. So I don't know how much time I have, but I might just keep one or two of them. Let me end with the blender bit, which was also still playing off the rivalry. A couple of these I'm sure you've seen, so I can speak to other issues as well.
Life evolves. You should too. 3G is great. 4G is better. Buy an Airtel SIM to enjoy double data on Nigeria's widest 4G network.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
So you can see the use of culture, modernity, as a metaphors for a change from one piece of technology to another in a smart way. Of course, the results have been wonderful for Airtel, with over 64 million subscribers and counting, and being the second biggest, largest telco brand today. So how can we make culture work, culture relevant to our work rather? We need to get the insights right. I mean, Airtel didn't just happen. It actually happened starting from interrogating the consumers, having sessions with them, and from there, the idea of data is life emerged from these conversations, which led to all the things that followed after. And once you get it right, you can keep going on and on and on and on. We got close to shooting a feature film. That didn't work, unfortunately. Client was not ready to go that way. I mean, that's how far you can go when you have the right idea. We need to get the inside right, and so that way it is true, and also it can be transgenerational. We did this for Children's Day. That is the brand, the Noah's Ark itself. Let history repeat itself. I mean, this is to reminding people about no other person than Fela Anikulapo Kuti is seen in the children for Children's Day. The Ladikwali lady, of course, Rashidi Yekini. So it's about tapping into culture. Is not just static, it's not just some artifact, it's also what is happening to us now. You need to explore cultural roots to enhance brand authenticity, because that's what we're aiming for actually. That is what every brand should be investing in, authenticity. In a world filled with all sorts of things about algorithm here and there, how can you stand out in today's world? If Africa is going to be half of the world at the end of this century, will the world be imposing itself on us, or are you going to tell the world our story? This is the challenge for all of us. I'm going to play one piece of work that speaks to how we can do that.
A very wise king wanted his daughter to marry a man as wise as he.
Masiboneke ukuthi yiphi indoda emadodeni. Mina ilisambala ngepondo. Indodakazi yakho ngeke sifole nina. Insusi sisa omnyo. Sikela. Wasiyakho. Wena. Bayete. Wena wenhlobo. Owomhlaba kuyosala lapha. Ngiyokunika inhliziyo. Ngoba kungunaphakade. To find the true measure of the man, you have to look inside. Just like the rich, dark, smooth taste of castle milk stout, truth comes from within.
One more from Castle Milk Stout from South Africa. I think it speaks to.
Sekuphela amakhulu eminyaka silwela ukugcina amasiko ethu. Sesaba ukuthi siwakhohle. Ukulahleka kwawo kusho ukuthi nathi sesilahlekile. Sibheke emaphusheni ethu, emathanjeni ethu, nakumasiko ethu akudala. Kodwa iqiniso lithi kufanele sibheke ngaphakathi kuphela, ngoba usiko lwethu lushaya ngaphakathi kwethu. Siyisizukulwane sokhokho bethu. Esikhathini esidlulile, esamanje, nesizayo, amasiko ethu awasoze afa.
Yeah, culture will never die. We don't need to go beyond the surface. I mean, that's the thing, because again, you can just be patronizing, if you're not careful. You have to go beyond the surface to create real connections with our audience. I think that's very important. Some of us may recall this commercial for SFH, for malaria, anti-malaria back then.
For we village, Oba and all the people gather for one Ubonga festival. Now, dear, the thing happen. Malaria dangerous, and a mosquito they take doing bad work. No take and play.
Anywhere una see this sign, now for there una go find better quality malaria prevention and treatment. Now mama, mothers against malaria attack, bring una this message.
Culture is still culture at the end of the day. Very exciting. In the same spirit, this is from India, and I found this very exciting. I mean, there are things we shy away from in this part of the world because we don't want to be seen to be, fetish or whatever and all that. But again, this is culture. And it's for Lifebuoy, the soap from Unilever. But it's amazing how they were able to tap into culture to pass a message, a very, very powerful message. I'll let you watch it, then we can talk. It's a bit long, but I'm sure you enjoy it.
ஆளுநரின் பொழுதொருவன் என் மகன் வளர்கிறான். உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான், மனதில் நிறைகின்றான். தாயும் தந்தையும் விரும்புவதெல்லாம் பொன்னேதானுங்க ஐயா, பொன்னேதானுங்க. கண்ணுக்கு கண்ணான தாழ்ந்த பிள்ளை துள்ளி விளையாடியே மனதை மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க, மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க, மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க. தெய்வம் தந்த செல்வமையா, நான் பெற்ற செல்வமையா. ஆரோக்கியம் அறிவும் பெற்று வளர்ந்துட்டாங்கய்யா. மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோம் ஐயா, நாமே மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோம் ஐயா. இந்த மகிழ்ச்சியின் வேதனை எதுவும் மறந்துடும் ஐயா. ஐயா, நான் ஒரு மேலும் பொழுதொரு வண்ணம் என் மகன் வளர்கிறான். உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான், மனதில் நிறைகின்றான்.
मेरा बच्चा 5 साल का हो गया।
इतना सब 5 साल में कौन सी बड़ी बात है?
बड़ी बात है मैडम, ये गुंडापा का पहला बच्चा है जो 5 साल की उम्र तक पहुंचा है।
Very powerful indeed. The other thing we need to do is we need to balance tradition with progressive values. So it's not saying because it's culture, it stays like that. We're not just doing cultural dance, like I said in the other at the beginning of my conversation. It's about looking at it in the dynamics of today, you know, and how it is evolving and how it's impacting our lives and how we're also impacting culture. Again, it's almost like back to what we did with the hypo thing, questioning that taboo about whether you could wash your woman's underpants or not. This is also from India, interestingly, and I hope some of us must have seen this, but it's worth looking at again to see how we can question some of these things, and as a brand, you can actually have a point of view and stand out and differentiate yourself.
Nana, ये देखो, shield, leg, helmet.
होमवर्क हो गया?
ये देखो.
फिर दाग लगा दिया. पापा, ये लीजिए आपके घर जाने की टिकट. Hello, yeah, I'm just going to send you the email in 5 minutes. Yeah, give me 5 minutes. I'm working on the press.
मेरी छोटी सी गुड़िया
Okay.
कितनी बड़ी हो गई, घर घर खेलती थी, अब घर संभालती है, ऑफिस संभालती है. आई एम सो प्राउड एंड आई एम सो सॉरी. सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है. सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं. ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं, तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है, पर कहता भी कैसे है.
और मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धो देना.
मैंने भी तो कभी तुम्हारी मम्मी की हेल्प नहीं की, और तुमने जो देखा वही सीखा. तुम्हारे हस्बैंड ने भी बचपन में यही देखा होगा. घर घर खेलते वक्त वो टीवी देखने की या न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने की एक्टिंग करता होगा, और तुम जैसी कोई छोटी सी लड़की चाय बनाने की एक्टिंग करती होगी. उसके डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी.
और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है। पर अभी भी देर नहीं हुई। इस सॉरी के साथ मैं अपनी तरफ से एक छोटी सी कोशिश करूंगा कि घर के काम में मम्मी की हेल्प करूं। किचन का किंग ना बन पाऊं तो कम से कम लॉन्ड्री में तो हाथ बटाऊं। इतने साल एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है, अब कुछ सही कर जाऊं। तुम्हारा पापा।
Yeah, it takes boldness for you to challenge some of these norms, because norms are part of culture and these things evolve over time. So this is our job also. It's not so much about just trying to replicate what has always been. You know, we should have a point of view. That's what clients are buying into. So for Africa, for us to beat the West at its game, you know, we don't have our job is not to even just beat the West at its game. You know, we need to show the world that we've got what it takes. You know, we've got game. Very important. More than that, also, culture is not a costume, like I said earlier. It's not just exhibitionism. It's not surface level. It's a compass. When brands honor it, they don't just market better, they mean more. And brands get better with time as well. So thank you for your time. I hope this is worth your while. Thank you very much.